So we will get to Chris Cuomo a little bit later, but let's actually start with an update on former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who we covered earlier this year, March 2021 to be exact. And at that time, I said I don't think Andrew Cuomo should resign as governor of New York after sexual misconduct allegations surfaced. And it was also revealed his administration may have been covering up COVID nursing home death numbers. Because at that point, there were only allegations and no investigations had been completed. And I said at the time, I believe he's innocent until proven guilty. Let's make sure these are vetted and investigated before burning him at the stake. And I will give my updated thoughts on those, on all that, I should say, a little bit later. But since our coverage earlier this year, we now have some completed quote unquote investigations, which are being classified as independent civil inquiries, especially the one from New York Attorney General Letitia James, which concluded that Andrew Cuomo had sexually harassed 11 women and had a quote unquote pattern of inappropriate behavior and quote unquote toxic culture in the governor's office. Now, amid the findings in this report, which Andrew Cuomo himself reportedly gave the go-ahead for Letitia James to oversee, thinking he would be cleared, well, the New York state legislature then opened an impeachment inquiry, but not soon after this inquiry made headlines and was made public, Andrew resigned as governor, and by the end of August was no longer in that seat, where he basically used the excuse of the halting of the state government needed to focus on my issues of impeachment was his reason to resign, to not be a distraction from their important work. Now, even after resigning, he is still facing a multiple front investigation from the U.S. Department of Justice based on the findings of this report by AG James for civil rights and labor law violations, because most of the behavior reported was with his subordinates. And by the way, he and his spokespeople still are claiming that Letitia James, is politically motivated to keep this investigation going, although it was announced just days ago that her campaign for governor, which kicked off following his resignation, has been suspended. So some of that speculation on her motive from a political perspective should be dying down or put to rest for now. Now, the DOJ is also criminally investigating the former governor for his pandemic handling on two fronts, one being him intentionally misleading the public by covering up nursing home COVID deaths, and the other related to the content in his published book called American Crisis: Leadership Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic, which is also under state investigation by Letitia James for his illegal use of state resources to publish and promote his memoir boasting about his handling of the pandemic. And as of this morning, the Joint Commission on Public Ethics voted 12-1 in favor of forcing Andrew Cuomo to return the $5.1 million he earned from the book by next month. Now, my updated thoughts on him, as I promised earlier. I still don't think he should have resigned, but I get that it is the lesser of the two evils over impeachment removal for him, and kind of allows him to go into hiding quicker while other investigations are going on. Whereas if he would have waited till everything would have been concluded, he might have still been found guilty and then just kicked his troubles down the line. I also agree it does eliminate one big distraction for others trying to do their jobs, but I don't think it was entirely selfless of him. So there's still a lot going on in the works regarding Andrew Cuomo. So meanwhile, his brother and now former CNN anchor Chris Cuomo is reeling from the fallout of his involvement in his brother's scandals, as well as his independent mess from that, but kind of in the same category, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But last week, Saturday, December 4th to be exact, Chris Cuomo was terminated from CNN as an anchor only days after an indefinite suspension resulting from a large document dump released by the aforementioned Letitia James as part of the investigation into Chris Cuomo's and his brother's involvement in his brother's scandal, which we just talked about. And CNN did acknowledge that Cuomo admitted to offering advice to his brother, But also, they knew that Chris was in a unique position and understood he needed to put family first and his job second. Well, this new dump of documents, which contained text messages, sworn testimony, and other raw materials, according to CNN, indicated a higher level of involvement than they had previously been aware of. Basically, those documents showed that he was basically an unpaid aide to the governor and his team, which prompted them to suspend him until they could further evaluate. Cut to a few days later, we learned CNN hired an outside law firm to conduct a review of these new documents, and then a lawyer also came forward with sexual misconduct allegations against Chris from a former junior staffer of his at another network. Now, all of this happened within a few days, which was enough for CNN to not wait to fire him until the investigations had all been completed. Now, my thoughts on this. So, the main problem regarding Chris and his brother is that Chris underplayed, and some would say even lied, about his involvement, saying on air back when his brother resigned, "I'm not an advisor. I'm a brother. I wasn't in control of anything. I was there to listen and offer my take." Now, I can't fault him for wanting to be there for his brother, who he clearly is close with and loves, as seen on air when he had his brother on as a guest. And that actually might be where he started going wrong, by not setting hard boundaries for having his brother on his show, because having him on once opens the door to questioning your journalistic integrity. Even if you aren't a journalist or a reporter, but more of an opinion commentator, it still cuts into your credibility on air. But Chris then went above and beyond just helping his brother. He was instructing the whole team in what appears to be an official role minus the pay. And I'm kind of comparing this to like an in-kind donation from a media figure if they have a certain political candidate on, and there's some rules around that. But my question is, would you want to publicly stick by a family member accused of these things? Or do you at least not be completely silent, but stick to making a public statement, denouncing his actions if they turn out to be true, saying you support an investigation, but say that you'll be also standing by his side, helping him take accountability and hold him accountable to change his behavior as his brother? Because I think there were many ways they could have gone about it. The problem is that Chris tried these ways and it ended up being that he wasn't being truthful. And that's the problem. Couple that untruth with the fact that this was helping his brother cover up Me Too allegations, making you wonder if Chris or his brother pushing any Me Too narratives or talking points, or even supporting actions against perpetrators, if they actually meant those things. Now, another theory I had was that maybe Chris, the reason he was so involved in his brother's cover-up is because he knew he had allegations of his own floating out there, and he was kind of hoping if his brother gets off, maybe he'll get some of that too. I don't know. But as far as Chris Cuomo's sexual misconduct allegations themselves, I still stand by my belief that I don't think someone should be fired for just an investigation alone. Hence why back in March, I said I don't think Andrew Cuomo should resign until all the investigation's complete and he's found guilty. And also why I hold that same standard to even former President Trump and current President Joe Biden, who both have accusers as well. And we can argue they're in different leagues because the president is different than the governor, and different from a news anchor, but I digress. So I'm also not CNN, and this may be them getting ahead of criticism and an attempt to change the narrative now to save themselves and start moving in a new direction with new management now by making an example out of one of their most prominent on-air talents today. Now, back to the President Trump subject. I've seen and heard over the years that, like, for instance, other media outlets, meaning Fox News, those personalities have been reported to be quote unquote advisors to President Trump. And we know Trump has been the subject of many scandals and many allegations. So I wonder where that fits in with this. Maybe the difference is that Chris was helping a direct relative, a family member. Maybe it was that he was helping them cover up and allegedly retaliate against the accusers. Maybe it was that he had his brother on his show giving the appearance that everything was okay when we know it was not okay at all. Or is it that he lied about his involvement and these other networks or other personalities at CNN are more honest about their involvement with outside sources, with people so powerful as a governor? And maybe this is just the tipping point of the kind of immoral relationships between media and government and other people that are going to be kind of brought to light. But also, maybe Trump and others are smarter about their relationship with media figures, ensuring it remains friendly conversation rather than an official on the record conversation. Because I know personally from my experience in my work outside YouTube and outside the internet, in the public sector, it is very clear on what you can and cannot do during working hours and also how you represent yourself outside of those hours. And there is a clear line separating the two. So now to you, I want to know how you think Chris Cuomo would go about a comeback to prominence after all of this. And also, how do you think Andrew can revive his public image to return to elected office? Let me know wherever you are able to comment.